Neighborhood History channel to our Saturday, part 2 of our 4-part Labor Day weekend special live streams. This is our second Q&A and a list of 3 Q&As that we'll be doing back and forth here on YouTube, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And then on Monday, we're going to be doing a live stream lecture. We usually just do that on Sunday, but we're going to be doing it Monday since it's a 3-day weekend, and it's a special weekend for us. So we will be doing a live stream lecture on Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern about the history of Labor Day and the celebration of that holiday. But also, of course, you have your usual Q&As Fridays and Saturdays here at the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, and you have them on Sundays, and we're going to add an extra one for you guys this weekend. So you get 3 Q&As from the Friendly Neighborhood History channel here on YouTube. If you like history and social studies, then you're in the right place. Consider liking and subscribing. Welcome to part 2 of our Q&A. We had a really interesting and fun one last night, and we're going to be going for another hour today answering all of your questions regarding history, social studies, and the like. So let's get a nice image. Jacques-Louis David, maybe. Going to pick a nice background for us so that we can get some good historical vibes going. But yes, if you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're a returning Friendly Neighborhood historian, it's so great to see you. Thank you for joining us. I can see my moderators like Harry and Solomon are already in the chat, so I really appreciate that. But yes, please like and subscribe if you enjoy history, social studies, and the like. And join us for an hour of historical discussions. And here's a nice background. This is from from Macbeth. So yeah, let's see what happens. We'll be going for the next hour, answering all your questions with history and social studies, and looking forward to it. We're going 4 live streams this weekend, really special for Labor Day. So we usually just do Friday and Saturdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, then Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern. We do a live stream lecture. Our live stream lecture has been moved to Monday, and we have an extra Q&A tomorrow at the same time as today. So yes, welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, where we take history not only seriously, but friendly. And we discuss it in a neighborly, communal manner, like a good neighbor. The Friendly Neighborhood History channel is here to talk about social studies with all of you. So if you have a question, topic, or comment regarding history and social studies, please drop it in the chat, and I'll be happy to address it. And yeah, so we've got the next hour going. So Solomon Gayahan, good to see you. We don't have to shut down the debate about the Palestinian stuff. I mean, yesterday it was just crazy, and I wrote a Substack article about it today, about how no one has any nuance on anything anymore, so please go check that out. Yes, and Steve's already commenting on other videos. I don't care. So yes, and thank you, Horace, for putting the social media handles there. You can follow us on Instagram, Substack, Patreon. There's also Facebook, the Friendly Neighborhood History channel on Facebook, and of course we have TikTok, and we get exclusive content on TikTok that you won't see here, and exclusive content here that you won't see on TikTok. So please follow us on both. But yes, yeah, please, we're looking forward to a good discussion, so please drop any questions about history or social studies in the chat, and I'll be sure to answer them. Gerald Ford, good to see you. By the way, my thoughts on your Substack is not great. Great, what do you think about my Substack? Is it the most recent one that I wrote? History doesn't always have to be serious, it needs to be fun too. Yes, we need to focus on the good things in history, the positive things on history, and that's what we do at the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. My moderator is absolutely correct with that one. Okay, I hope you have a great supper. What are you making for supper, Solomon? And I like how you use supper, very, very historical of you. So yes, yes. Oh yes, Horace is the only one who's blunt. It's not just you, Harry. I have very blunt moderators who have very impassioned views on history, and I wouldn't have it any other way because they love history and they love talking about it. So Horace, go away, fire away about my Substack article. And you guys can read my thoughts about historical topics, cultural phenomenon, and the like on my Substack, which is in the pinned chat. Yeah, you whine about it after people argue with you, after you argue this or that. No, I don't whine about people arguing with me. I don't whine about anything, actually. I find it frustrating when I have a debate with someone or back and forth about history, and people just won't accept what I say. So, no, I do not whine about it. And you're just mad because there's 3 world wars and not 2. I thought the South African settlers were Dutch, but then I heard they were French aligned. Why did the British Empire despise and fight them? Who are the Afrikaners and the Boers in the Second Boer War? Okay, so that's a very great question, Guy Ahan. Thank you for a good question about history. So the Afrikaners, it was in language Afrikaans, and I believe it was the mix of the Dutch Boers and the African peoples. The Boers were the Dutch settlers themselves who went from the Netherlands and created colonies in South Africa before the British arrived. Eventually, the British arrived and drove the Boers out, and eventually assimilated both the Dutch Boers and the native South Africans into a colony that became the colony of South Africa that eventually was... They eventually gave its liberty, I think, in the 1930s and 40s, left there completely by the 1960s. The Dutch took over, doubled down on apartheid against the Africans, which eventually ended with the rise of African majority African rule in the 1990s under Nelson Mandela. But yes, the French obviously were on the side of the Dutch only because it was undermining to the British. So the British and French empires throughout their histories over the last 500 years have both been at each other's throats in multiple different occasions. It's only really in the last 100 years that they've been driven close together, because that's how powerful the Germans are. Not only can they start 2 world wars in the 20th century, one in the 18th century, but they can also bring the French and British together, which no one had been able to do for 1,000 years before them. So good on you. Germans are not so good. Can we agree that James Polk did invade Mexico for slavery? No, we cannot agree about that. I'm still waiting to hear about your talk about what you felt on my Substack. So if you like the history I just talked about, please like and subscribe. It's good to see Ozzy and Steve and Yuda here. Hello, Yuda. Good to see you. Yes, I did my best with that Tish B'Av video, trying to be as accurate as possible. And Simon the Bunny is here, my wonderful moderator. Simon's been with us a long time. I think over a year now, Simon's been doing this, coming to the channel. He loves the live streams. He does this all pro bono. Him and Harry and Hars and Solomon and Rodolfo, all my great moderators do this pro bono just because they're trying to help out their good historical, partner. Yes, Steve, I have a problem with people disagreeing with me. How? Wow, amazing. No, I don't have any problem with people disagreeing with me. I have a problem with people not taking no for an answer and just insisting upon their way over and over and over again, and not adding anything new to the conversation, and then starting to attack me personally, or starting to make implications about about personal views that I have never shared. That's the problem. So yes. Steve, do you have anything? Steve always adds intelligent things to the conversation. He just doesn't like what I say, and he doesn't accept what I say. So whatever, it's my channel. I'm sorry, this is mine. I try to do history in a friendly, neighborly manner, but when I am not allowed to do that, then I'm going to go dark, friendly neighborhood history on you. You're going to see my dark Brandon side. So what motivated the British to end slavery? There were economic motivations, to be certain. The British wanted the slave trade to end because they were focusing on a mechanized society, an international mechanized society. They didn't like the fact that the Ottomans were engaging in the slave trade, so they decided to economically curtail them by patrolling the shores off the coast of Africa to try to prevent slave ships from escaping. But basically, the British felt it was more lucrative to invest in industrialization, and there was also, of course, a great moral outcry amongst many of the people in Great Britain about slavery. So you had a moral aspect, but you also had an economic shift. Really, the Industrial Revolution was the death knell for slavery, for chattel slavery in particular for the West. Once these countries became industrialized, Great Britain, France, and yes, even the United States, it became obvious that ending slavery, but slavery was obsolete and stupid, and of course the moral outrage against it was also extremely strong. So something that's quite fascinating to see is that what the North is able to do in the Civil War, they are able to dominate the technological side of the battle because they have a much more advanced industrialized society that makes it easier to transport things by railroads, build ironclad warships, and move troops a lot quicker. So there's a lot going on there. But yes, I didn't see your retracted message, so I'm not happy about anything. Your Substack is a bunch of complaining and unfunny jokes in how you write it as if you are trying to write it in a professional way, but it reads like garbage. Wow, that's fascinating. I don't know how it reads like garbage. Harry reads my Substack. Harry seems to like it, even if he doesn't agree with some of the things I point out. I mean, I think my Substack's fine. If you don't like it, I don't know. That's just ad hominem. That's not actually explaining what's wrong with the Substack. That's just making a bunch of generalized attacks. So, Hars, explain to me exactly what's wrong with my Substack. Where am I historically wrong? Where am I culturally wrong? You can disagree with my perspectives, but don't just throw out a bunch of ad hominems. Me and Friendly disagree about nearly everything, and he hasn't gotten angry, upset, or mad with anything with me, so he definitely hates. I mean, you and I have gotten back and forth, but it's not, I don't disrespect anything you have to say, Harry, because you have a lot of great things to say about history. I don't think that you're always right, and you don't think that I'm always right. Thoughts on the colonization of the Comanche territory being so slow in the beginning? This was mainly in Texas, I'm imagining correctly. That's how all colonization of Native American land, to one extent or another, was. You had whites, they move in a particular area, they try to figure out some sort of a way to live with the Native Americans, allowing them to fish on their side of a river, so to speak, and allowing them to fish on their own side of the river. But eventually the desire for land, a growing population, and possibly resources, as well as the demonization of Indian culture, promotes white Western Europeans and the Americans to basically shove the Native Americans out of their land and take that land. So warfare with the Native Americans in they realize what's actually happening to them, often resort to violence. And so this is a huge issue. Now, it's not always like this in every single situation. Sometimes the natives were just outright violent. Sometimes the whites just came in and tried to kill as many natives as they possibly could. But frantic, basically, you have a slow progression and a cycle of taking land, finding interesting parts of the land, wanting more land, trying to making treaties and breaking treaties, and it happened over and over again. The Sioux were probably the worst victims of it. The Cherokee were definitely victims of it, and the Comanche were as well. Were there abolitionists during colonial times? Founding fathers who thought Africans should be free men? Yes, John Adams would be a great example. Ben Franklin started the Abolitionist Society in Pennsylvania. He's an international criminal wanted in 55 countries, and FBI's most wanted 10 million United States dollars to his whereabouts to catch him. Who are you referring to now? What's the opinion? Why are we deleting all the comments? Who's selling drugs? I don't know what you're talking about. It's not. We don't have to delete every single comment someone makes. Yeah, we'll see, Cherish. We'll see. We'll see how today goes. Yesterday was a lot of people, but it was a lot of nonsense. And yes, we're doing another Q&A tomorrow, so let's see. Why is everyone afraid to name the JQ? What JQ? Do you know anything about how a certain art student stopped Poland? I know an absolute huge amount about that, Lost Fruit. I mean, you have a kind of an angsty art student who embraces a radical nationalist policy and then tries to overthrow the government. It doesn't work out. He writes his memoirs saying exactly what he's going to do, and then somehow the Germans don't believe that he's going to do it and think that he's just playing around, and he gets to do it, and he makes kind of buddies with the Soviets, who, although he ostensibly hates communism, he'll work with anyone who's willing to help him. So he is able to divide up Poland with the communist Soviets and set the world on fire from there. Let me see. White Americans were raised by slave caretakers. These people who were raised, these black women, ended up humanizing the slaves, swaying cultural beliefs about blacks. Yes. I mean, it's almost impossible from the onset of slavery to not look at slaves and understand that they are human. It was a continual battle against logic and the eye test. Thank you, Rick. I'm doing my best. Okay, you know too much. I know a decent amount. You clearly don't give a you know what. Harry, and we don't like mods who think they are smart. Harry's very smart. Every time me and Friendly disagree, he turns into a neo-Newsom because I show his view is disingenuous about Wilson. A neo-Newsom? What? Oh, for goodness sake. I'm still waiting for you to explain to me how bad my Substack articles are and where I'm wrong about any of that. For somebody who posts the Substack article link that gets pinned on the chat to then say the Substack is bad and it's just me complaining and whining and making up a bunch of crap, to then post it and then have it pinned, that's disingenuous. That's how disingenuousness works, not what I'm doing. Have you heard the true story? No, I have not, and I don't believe that's true. Thoughts on the or is that one of the, wait, I don't think that's true, no. I don't know what the Hannibal directive is off the top of my head. I just did say my thoughts about the Substack, but you didn't actually explain why you think that. You just said, I don't like it, even though I posted it in the chat, and then you have it pinned, so that's fascinating. By ignoring the thoughts I just said. I think you just like the phrase disingenuous. Do you believe the unalive count of the Jews is accurate or exaggerated? No judgment, I'm just curious because I don't believe the numbers. It's fair not to believe the numbers. I mean, I certainly do believe the numbers. I think they're reliable numbers for the most part. I think if you feel that on the one end, it's not 5 to 6 million Jews, then what are you going to do about the supposed 5 to 6 million communists, Slavs, homosexuals, people with mental disabilities? You can't, if you're going to downplay the Holocaust, people who downplay the Holocaust only just downplay that part of it. They don't downplay the part that includes the mass torture and execution of Slavs and homosexuals and communists. So the truth of the matter is, in my opinion, I'm a free speech absolutist. People should be allowed to say basically whatever they want. And yes, we should be able to have discussions about these things scientifically and reasonably and ask about where our data comes from and if our data is reliable or not. There is nothing wrong in doing that. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't live on this precipice of people can never criticize the Jewish people or can never criticize Israel. I certainly criticize Israel a lot. If you read one of my disingenuous Substack articles, you'll see that. But I think every people group for its actions throughout history needs to be criticized. It's more difficult to do that with the Jews because they're a non-assimilating group that has kind of gone through all sorts of areas in the world. But my point is that I don't think that it's unfair to have a perspective about the Holocaust. I just don't agree with it. And I think it should be, and I think it's totally unfair when people basically say, if you say the numbers are not exactly what the record says, then you're an anti-Semite. That's not fair to me. Yeah, you know a lot of stuff, but it's not pointless, Harry. You're able to make those connections and explain how history works out. You are being disingenuous by ignoring the thoughts I just said. How am I? I'm not ignoring your thoughts. Hassan, can you just tell him he got owned and then we can move on? South Africans are more human than Euro-Asians because Euro-Asians mix more with non-humans. What? Did you know a $2 super chat is only about 7 shekels if you enjoy the stream? For God's sakes. Oh, jeez. Yes, I am totally ignorant because I don't agree with your perspective. Isn't that the world we live in today? Yes, a Roman soldier received backup, and they killed 10,000 Jews because there was a riot after the Jerusalem Jews were offended of a Roman soldier lifted his leg. Oh, that makes sense. That sounds a little familiar, but I wouldn't say that it was the FAR. I would say that it's the oppression of the Romans. He called us the Avengers yesterday, and now today we are the Nazi powers, the Axis powers. I never said that. I said you guys were the Avengers. You're still the Avengers. I just don't know why you're putting up a Substack link for a Substack that you think is bad and disingenuous. Yeah. Okay, so why did we time out Hassan? What did Hassan? Hassan's just starting crap in the chat. Jeez. What were some of the first areas settled after the original 13 colonies? Vermont, believe it or not, is not a 13 colony, but it was settled as part of Massachusetts. Maine. The British took the Ohio River Valley after the end of the French Indian Wars, so there's there. Do you think the idea of true unbiased discourse is realistic? It's hard. It's really hard to remain objective. Philippines breed with non-humans in their area. Okay, then. He just doesn't like me. Oh, geez. Why did the American Revolution not spread to and include the Caribbean or Canada? Those areas did not have a revolutionary movement. They didn't have the activity of the Sons of Liberty. So, yeah. I'm trying to catch up with the chat. If you haven't gotten your question answered, I'm sorry. Hello, Oa from Ghana. Great to see you. Thank you, E-Dog, for sharing that. Now I know a little bit more that I didn't know before. I don't think you're subsecond disingenuous. I just think it's poorly written. Okay, why is it poorly written? What's poorly written about it? Is it because you don't understand phrases like disingenuous and disproportionate? We want the entire world to see demonstrations in Indonesia are getting worse. We need to help fighting the corrupt government. Interesting. I haven't heard about that. I do daily news updates. I'm going to have to look into that. I love learning about Indonesia. It's a fascinating area. Largest Muslim population in the world. One of the first places freed after the Allies gained its independence right after the Allies ended the last World War. Owned by the Dutch for 3 centuries. Thank you for sharing that, Fauzi, and welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. Joke Topper, thank you for joining us. OA, I really appreciate that you love my work. I hope you're speaking for a lot of Ghanaians. Lives go on for an hour, and so only time out people for 10 minutes max unless it's, yeah. I don't want people timed out forever. I want them to be able to interact with the channel, and Hassan is a well-known Friendly Neighborhood historian. You should be allowed to do that. Dude, these Muslims are crazy. I know them because I'm ex-Muslim atheist. They want to criticize everyone, but they will get angry if you critique them. Sure, Israel sucks, but so does Saudi, Qatar, ISIS, etc. Yes, nobody knows what proportionality is anymore. They just decide that if they don't like the way a Substack is written, it's disingenuous. But basically, Kay, you are correct. This is something I talked about yesterday and in my Substack article today. I don't see any of the people who are criticizing Israel, and they have a reason to criticize Israel, for the way it's handled the war with the Palestinians and in Gaza, or the settlement of the West Bank, or Netanyahu, or whatever you want to talk about. I don't see them applying the same metrics to Hamas, to the Palestinian Authority, to Qatar, to the Saudi government. And it's this implicit notion that we all live under, that we all know, as Tucker Carlson said, it's obvious, everybody knows it, that basically the Israelis are a democracy, they are a Western-like country, and so they are expected to behave better than the Middle Eastern countries. I'm not saying anything bad about those Middle Eastern countries. I love studying them. I love learning about their history and stuff like that. But nobody has condemned the Lebanese government for basically putting up with Hezbollah until just recently. Nobody has condemned Qatar for putting up Hamas's leaders in its hotels. And as soon as anyone says that, they're a pro-Zionist. So it's just if you're going to criticize them both on a fair plane, then yes, they both need to be criticized for various different horrible things. And why is that a bad thing? Why can't I do that? Do I have to live under this code that that it's an implied code that even people who hate the West seem to live by, that the West has a superior moral code, at least when it comes to fighting a war. It's very strange to me. So, hey Jen, good to see you. The one banning people are kicking them, yeah. How did the East India Trading Company grow so massive so quickly? What were the first example of utilizing industrialization? The textile industry is where industrialization really began in Britain, but shipping industrialization to India during the British occupation of that area was extremely important. The East India Company won by military victories. Robert Clive, Clive of India, and Britain's successes in the 7 Years' War in India were a huge part of that. What is your favorite war? I would say the 7 Years' War, which I believe to be World War I. If not, it's going to be the Napoleonic Wars or either the two world wars in the 20th century, 601. You can't say anything wrong. But yes. Thank you, E-Dog. I love having you on this channel. Less us and them talk. Not all Muslims and Jews think and vote the same way. Any friendly historian knows that. Yes, and you can be a friendly neighborhood historian too if you just like and subscribe. And yes, I don't like the idea that you can criticize governments without criticizing people. You can criticize nations without criticizing races. Everybody thinks of Israel and they think of the Jews. And that is used in two different ways, and I think both of the ways they're using it is unfair. On the one end, people who say that you criticize Israel, you're an anti-Semite. That's ridiculous nonsense. That's like saying I'm un-American for criticizing an American president. That's absurd. Americans love to criticize their presidents. Or like the French saying, or it's like someone saying, wow, the French seem to like to kill each other a lot in civil wars. That's not very, that's like the epitome of French history in the 19th century, and revolutions and stuff like that. So, in the French religious wars of the 16th century, so there you go. I mean, if you look down this chasm of darkness in history, it can get really deep. But on the one end, you can't criticize Israel or you're an anti-Semite. But on the other end, if you say anything good about Israel, you're a Zionist. And I don't know what these terms are not defined. No one defines them. No one cares. The media does not care, which is why I do the news on the channel every day for you guys, because I think that the way the media reports almost everything is awful. And I roll my eyes at every single one of them, left and right. And I only use them when I need to access information. They told us Americans thought Canada would side. Yeah, there was a lot of people who thought that. It went nowhere, the siding with Canada. So yeah. Let me see here. You're pretty knowledgeable about history. You've got a new subscriber. Thank you, Lost Fruit. I appreciate having you here. James Polk was very clearly invaded Mexico for slavery. He was a slave owner. His entire administration was filled with slave-owning Democrats. Yes, that's like saying, yes, clearly. That's such a bad conclusion. You think that's my Substack is bad. That's a bad conclusion. I'm sorry, Harris, but the truth of the matter is, just because they were slave-owning Democrats, or just because James Polk was a slave owner, doesn't mean they did it for slavery, expressly. Never do your Tucker Carlson impression ever again. Why? It's obvious. It's a good impression. Everybody knows that. I'm sorry. It's fun to imitate somebody. An 8, a 10, I'll take it. I hate people who come just to do emojis and make one stupid comment. Really gets on my nerves. It's okay. They don't have anything better to do, and they're welcome to join us. And maybe they'll become part of it. I don't know. Are the Iraq people considered Caucasian? I know the Aryans, the Iranians are considered Aryan, but I'm not going to go with that. All right, quit timing out people for saying things about Israel-Palestine. The 86K trend is getting a little much. We're not going to 86 everybody who brings up Israel and Palestine. I've said don't put the kibosh on that. And anyone who's listening to what we're talking about can hear a nuanced perspective. And you can read a nuanced perspective on my beautiful Substack, my amazing Substack, that Hars, my moderator, will tell you is just fantastic. He should know. He's the one who put it in the chat. There. Okay, was the Transcontinental Railroad a complete cash grab, or did the American public truly benefit from a railroad that twists turns for no apparent reason? Good question, Joshua. I mean, it did twist and turn. It was all about getting there as soon as possible. I mean, it did benefit, but there were better railroads constructed later that were not made by the government. So the railroad industries that came later were actually more effective at building better industries. It's kind of that thing where the prototypical, the original prototype for the phone, for a cell phone, was really big and heavy and makes no sense in our modern understanding of cell phones, but it was there for a reason. It's kind of how that's going. You've got a development in technology, you have a better way of doing it. It wasn't the best way to do it. It was a cash grab. It was a glory grab too, but it was a successful means of accomplishment for transportation. So yeah, thoughts on Persians? I mean, I love the Persian people. Now Hassan's back. Good. Why did Britain and France beef for so long? They were dedicated haters. England was conquered by the French, at least a part of the French, the Normans, in 1066 with William the Conqueror. And when the English monarchs during the 11th and 12th centuries basically staked their claims to French land, the French king was really upset by this. This led to a series of wars culminating in the Hundred Years' War. And then after the French basically kicked the English out of their lands, the English believed it was their duty to humiliate France on the global stage, no matter what they could do. They won a very successful war doing this, the 7 Years' War, where they took over the American Midwest as well as Canada, and the French got theirs in developing their own empire in West Africa. So, Parsis, what's that about? I don't know exactly, Faith. Israel is remarkable and unremarkable. Dude, we are doing our job. Stop criticizing us, but I will say Harry is timing people. Okay. Anyone ever noticed that Macron's wife wasn't an issue until he wanted Palestinian statehood? What? What do you mean rude? You must have a podcast soon. Oh, we'll do a podcast. Podcast requires a scripted. A podcast requires a script about a particular historical topic that's preloaded on a website. Once we get a website going, once we have a brand logo, then we will do a podcast. And let's see, we got a super chat. Thank you so much, Corzo. The world needs to hear of a historical result of social, political, and economic systems that have failed to succeed in raising the standard of living for all humans. W history. Yes, they need to know about all types of history in all types of ways. I really appreciate that, Corzo. We love having you here. You always share such insightful things, and your back and forth with Hassan was one of the, although not always pleasant yesterday, was one of the most enjoyable parts reading through the chat when I literally had people yelling at me. So thank you, Corzo, for that wonderful, wonderful comment. It's great having you here as always. Hello, King James. Great to see you. Thank you for joining us. Which King James are you? Are you the first one who who helped write the Bible, translate the Bible, or are you the second one who got thrown out of power? Choose wisely. Yes, and yes, maybe ask a historical question about the Israel-Palestine thing, like Simon's saying. So you don't have a problem with me timing people. Okay, so now we're back to arguing. I don't know what a bunch of stuff you're saying means, but I'll learn some stuff, and I like to hear people rant, so I'll watch you for a while. Thank you, Frog Lover. I think. Let me see here. Please ask. Okay, let me see. I agree. Israelis are not innocent, but when you see their enemies, aka Muslims, Arabs, they are not better, and maybe they are worse. Palestinians should accept Israelis and stop wanting to exile them. Yes, and Israelis should stop trying to take Palestinian land. Why can't we just all agree to these basic things? So yeah, Indian only hate British for oppression, but forget Portuguese people. The Portuguese oppress them, the French oppress them, the Dutch oppress them, and guess what? Disparate Muslim invaders oppress them. Poor India can't get a break, Tushar. Let me see here. What do you think about these Tartaria people? I don't agree with the Tartaria notion. I think it's just the idea of wanting to have an Atlantis. I think it's based on a lot of nostalgia about ancient worlds and about the past, where you want a modern civilization that was like that. But yeah. What started the Gilded Age? What industries allowed it to flourish for 20, 30 years? What were the rival politics of the following progressive era? Well, that's a lot to unpack there, but it's a great series of questions, Gaihan. The Gilded Age really kicks up after the Civil War and after the Reconstruction period, when America really turns its attention to the focus on industrialization. What made it gilded was the fact that you had a vast amount of wealth being assembled. You do have the assembling of gold by only a few people who control a huge amount of it. You have the big business and industries, the captains of industry emerging out of that, the robber barons, Andrew Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller, Cornelius Vanderbilt, James G. Duke. Yes, the guys who have their names on the universities, I know. The steel industry, the steam, obviously the train industry. Vanderbilt builds a railroad industry. I believe it's Vanderbilt. It's the new technologies that allow them to flourish, the same way AI is allowing Elon Musk to flourish, I guess. But what were the rival politics of the following progressive era? You have an emergence of a group that is opposed, that wants to reform and clean up all of the workplaces, get better wages for the workers, help them out more, and you have people who are opposed to that, who believe that the robber barons have done nothing wrong. And many of them are just kind of paid spokespeople for those robber barons. And that is a huge twist and turn and battle until the beginning of the 20th century. In your opinion, what was Caesar's greatest military victory? Pharsalus. Basically meant he was going to take over Rome. I would not go with Alesia, Pharsalus. Thank you, William. It's great to have somebody who loves history here. Yes, we're doing a special extra live stream on Monday. Join us for that, where I talk about the history of Labor Day. Tomorrow's our third Q&A. Spain developed most in the U.S. They got most of the land, but they didn't develop the most. Let me see here. Friendly history. Your view is being disingenuous about Polk. It was very clear that he didn't invade Mexico just for his ideology, but was driven big by slavery. Do you just think that everyone who disagrees with you is disingenuous? So basically that word means nothing now, Lars. I'm sorry. I love you, but come on. Just the idea that it's disingenuous because I think I don't like what you say, that's not disingenuous. It's actually disingenuous to think something is disingenuous just because you don't like it. I'm not being disingenuous. Disingenuous would be to ignore certain things. I'm not ignoring certain things. I don't agree with your perspective. Yes, Polk was a slave owner. Yes, Polk didn't care if slavery spread to the Western territories. We all know this. This is clear. It's obvious. Everyone around you is telling you this. See? And if you're going to keep going on about it, I'm just going to answer everything you say in a Tucker Carlson voice. I am Arab, but I am atheist, so living with Arabs, I was raised to hate Israel, but as I grow and become more atheist, I realize Palestinians are not innocent either. Yes, no one is innocent. That's the real takeaway. By the way, we are getting more technology to upgrade the channel. We just got our first payment from YouTube, so any donation you make, joining and becoming a member, or like Corza with that wonderful super chat, helps the channel out. We just got our green screen. We're going to get that going once we get a better laptop. You're also going to be seeing me on Discord and Twitch. It's going to be a really, really fun next few months for the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. But yes, if you could take a time machine back in time, what area would you like to see? Late 19th century Paris. It's just gorgeous. I want to go to Renoir exhibits when they first come out, when he's alive. Okay. Horace, don't be an instigator. Yes, Nugs. Great question. Why are my moderators arguing? Do I need to go into Trump mode when he wrote that stupid tweet about Jeffrey Epstein? Why are some of my guys, and some cases gals, fighting about this? I don't know. Simon's keeping his head, and Solomon, kind of. Parsis came to India 1,000 years before the British did. Oh, now I know what you're talking about. Is that the Persians? Like Polk literally had his administration as a bunch of slave-appointing Democrats, and Polk himself was a slave owner. Yes, and so was George Washington. George Washington was a slave owner, and so was Thomas Jefferson. Were they totally committed to slavery during the first administration? That's disingenuous. Is not Palestine a slur, historically speaking? Yes, it was made by the Romans to insult the Jews, referring to their ancient enemies, the Philistines, who were a group of sea people who landed on the western coast of the Levant around 1000 BC. There, you just learned a bunch of history you didn't know before. Like and subscribe and become a Friendly Neighborhood Historian. It's not that hard. Palestine was an insult to the Jews, just like the word Hebrew was an insult used by the ancient Egyptians. Just to show you that hating Jews is not something new that you just discovered by watching a Nick Fuentes video. It's been around forever. It's obvious. Everybody knows this. Sorry, I'm liking this accent too much. Didn't Israel give the Palestinians their land? The Palestinians still invaded and abducted hundreds of people. The Palestinians do not have land in all the world. They don't have an autonomous government that is recognized by the vast majority of the world. They don't have autonomy. They rely on Israel for much of its infrastructure. Many of their people work in Israel. So the West Bank is not an independent nation. It is dependent on Israel for its existence in some ways. The Israelis, for their part, have offered many different deals through the years to give the Palestinians statehood. The Palestinians will not take it. And the real truth of the matter is a lot of them, not all of them, some of them, and unfortunately Hamas for sure, and some of the Palestinian Authority as well, don't want an Israel land at all. They don't want Israel to be a nation. Yasser Arafat came around to the idea that Israel actually could live with the Palestinians before it was mutually assured destruction, or we win, they lose. Hamas has that attitude, and the Netanyahu cabinet seems to have that attitude. And Netanyahu himself, I don't know what he thinks. He's in a tight political situation. How did a small number of Egyptian colonizers in short time become so large amid form U.S., which is larger than Europe? European colonizers, in short. They followed a religious code that encouraged them to be fruitful and multiply. And they basically were able... You had an opening for immigrants. You had opportunities even from the earliest days. Immigration was popular in the United States. So no, I didn't lose my time just not wearing one, but I am wearing a button down in 95-degree weathers. So yes, this counts as formal wear. Let me see here. You'll get 1 million subs. Just keep going. I'm just gonna keep going till we get there. Tom, you'll be the first to know. Are you Catholic or Protestant? You don't have to say so if you don't want to. I'm asking because I want to know your opinion about Guy Fawkes. Well, I don't share my religious perspectives, my political perspectives. If I share a geopolitical opinion, it's only in the context of my understanding of the history of that topic. So if I don't know a lot, I don't say a lot. I can't say for sure who deserves Kashmir, for instance, because I just don't know enough. I've often said that maybe Kashmir could be its own entity, but maybe I'm just stupid and I don't know anything about India and Pakistan, at least when it comes to that. I know there was a war there 50 years ago. There was almost another war over it a few months ago. I know a lot about India and Pakistan, but I can't say for sure, so I don't give an opinion about something that I'm not qualified to answer. And at the same time, of course, I have an opinion on my own. And at the same time, when it comes to religion and politics, I don't share my perspectives. I'm going to share a summary of what's happening and some initial thoughts, but I'm not going to share exactly I think this should happen or that should happen. But so I'm not going to say which one I am. For all you know, I'm not. You're assuming that I'm religious. I've never said that I'm religious. But Guy Fawkes. Really interesting guy. Obviously, the gunpowder plot was a failed attempt. It was basically a last-ditch effort by Catholics who believed that after Elizabeth died, there was a chance to turn England back to Catholicism, but when you got an even stronger Protestant king like James I on the throne, you're going to have to, they wanted to overthrow him, so he put a bunch of gunpowder in the bottom, and remember, the 5th of November, it was supposed to blow up Parliament and kill the king when he was in session. They found out about it, and Fawkes was executed. There are many efforts throughout the 17th century for the Catholics to get one last chance at England, and James II was their last one, and they overthrew him because of it. When was it invented? The art of stone pelting. Oh, I think it's just an ancient custom that has existed, and people the earliest writings we have about it are from the ancient Babylonians, the Egyptians, and the Jews. So, no, your view is disingenuous because you are ignoring clear facts. No, I'm saying I said the facts. I don't disagree with the facts. I disagree with your interpretation of the facts. This is what I talk about all the time on the channel. The fact is, and why am I not using the Tucker Carlson accent to answer you? The fact is that Polk was a slave-owning Democrat. Yes, many of them were slave-owning Democrats. That doesn't mean they did it for the sake of slave-owning Democrats. I like drinking Coca-Cola, but that doesn't mean that I'm doing this channel so that I can buy myself more Coca-Cola. There's an analogy. It's not perfect, but take with it what you will. It's obvious. Everybody knows this. Okay, what is the area you were talking about? I was just talking about James K. Polk and the Mexican-American War in the mid-19th century. Who invented denim? It's a material that's existed for a long time, but the cultivation of it into jeans was Levi Strauss, German immigrant in San Francisco. Did you ever take art history classes? Yes, and I loved it. But interestingly, you think someone being a Protestant or a Catholic affects people's opinions on this today. Exactly. So for history, what is your evidence that Polk didn't invade Mexico to support slavery? So you're asking me to prove, so you're asking me to make an argument to prove a negative. That's not how argumentation works. You're shifting the burden of proof. You have to prove to me that he did it for the sake of slavery. I think he didn't care one way or another. The evidence that I seem to have seems to indicate that Polk did not care and was perfectly fine with it spreading there, but he didn't do it for more slave states. At the very, very least, the closest I'm going to come to you is to say maybe they've sort of like, oh yeah, we'll have more slave senators. Won't that be cool? Polk was a rabid expansionist. He was a rabid Jacksonian Democrat. He was rabidly interested in manifest destiny, and he basically believed that the pioneers were the good guys. And so he wanted the pioneers to get all of the land they had started settling in, and so that went from Texas to the West. And by the way, it wasn't him who put Texas in America. It was John Tyler, the president before him. So was he doing it for slavery? Has every president who's ever added a state, especially in a southern state, done it for slavery? Did Monroe add Alabama and Mississippi because he was a slave owner? Because he was a slave owner. Fun historical fact. Muhammad was raised by parents who prayed to a pagan and followed in their footsteps. Yes, and also, here's one that's just going to get me in trouble. There's no evidence he lived in Mecca. Let's move forward. Can you talk about the Great Divergence? Don't know enough about it to speak to it. Hello, Tayyib. Good to see you. Hassan, play nice with Harry. We have established multiple times that he's not objective in his thoughts, and he just admitted minutes ago that it's hard to remain objective. It's not disingenuous, it's human. I have opinions about history because I know stuff about history, and I come to logical conclusions about the history. But I tend to try to be as objective as I possibly can in representing the historical information. Why is nuance so hard for even my own people? I believe that's true, Steve. There was a large percentage of the Roman population that was enslaved. It's been around forever for good reason. Oh, geez. Yeah. Thank you, King James. I really appreciate you. Actually, I have a question on spellings. What is the history of American English spelling? I don't know. I think it might be more. I think it might be because the English language is derived in many of its words from the French. I think that has something to do with it, but I can't know. So, the Great Vow Movement. Oh, geez. That's a disingenuous response. Thomas Jefferson and George Washington didn't do anything to clearly expand slavery. Also, we knew their views of slavery clearly. Polk, we know he supports it. Jefferson had slaves. Madison had slaves. Monroe had slaves. They all expanded the United States. More states were added. Did Jefferson? Okay, Thomas Jefferson is a slave owner. He did it in slavery. He doubled the size of the United States, clearly to expand slavery, before there was a Missouri Compromise that said those territories he added would not be slave states. He added Louisiana. James Madison made it a state with New Orleans. Clearly a slave state. Part of the Deep South. We can keep going down this route forever. Jefferson didn't free his slaves when he died. We all know this. As Steve could tell you. It's obvious. Everybody knows this. Do you like Minuteman Man? I like learning about Minutemen, like historical ones. Israel's conduct proves that there should only be a Palestinian state. Israel is an imposter state. Does Hamas's conduct prove that there should only be an Israeli state? Because we can go back and forth on it. I mean, yeah. Thank you, Slots. I try to be as smart as I can. Why is there's colon and colonized? Let's not go down that road. I'm pretty sure, because it's all a bunch of crap. I'm pretty sure it started with the use. Oh, geez. Slavery was and is immoral. Humans are parasites that leech off of each other with no hesitation. Why take care of the slave when you can pay him a small change and he has to get every cent himself? That's an argument that was made by Southerners about northern industrialism, but you obviously don't have a cessation of free choice and free will. Of course, the people who came over to the United States worked for those wages, chose to do it. The people who moved into the factories chose to do it. The slaves didn't really choose to be enslaved, put on ships, and come to America. Neither did their children choose to be enslaved. There's the big difference. Are you self-taught or went to school for history? Both. He does share his political position, just very covertly, just watch the channel. I don't share my political positions. I really, really don't. I criticize what I think is historical ignorance and bad decision-making because of what I see from history. When I see history rhyming, then I step in. But I don't typically make my opinions known about any of this stuff. Modern Israel's directive at IEF soldiers cannot be taken prisoner under any circumstance. Oh, interesting. That's not a good one. You should allow your soldiers to be taken prisoner rather than kill them in an exchange. It's almost like a kamikaze-like thing. Yeah, I don't like that at all. Now that when I think about it, because I think of see what I did? I just gave my opinion based off the history I know. Roosevelt asked Hitler to pledge to not invade territories, including Palestine. Interesting. Didn't know that, Stephen. Is that true? I'm going to need some evidence on that one. Has the Arabian horse breed dominated the Mustang historically? I think so. Can you talk about the Silk Roads and how there was cultural trades in Eurasia? The Silk Road, thank you for saying roads. There were multiple different roads where Chinese silk was moved from East Asia through South Asia into the Middle East and then eventually found its way to Europe. There were multiple different roads. There were plenty of people who stopped halfway in or went only a part of it to trade in different areas. Afghanistan was obviously one of the huge crossroads for it between the southwestern part of Asia, which is now known as the Middle East, and East and South Asia. So, this allowed China to spread a lot of its ideas because when you trade, you don't just trade in goods, you trade ideas. And when you trade items, you're trading what's important to you. So, yes, I disagree with people all the time. It's not a bad thing. My moderators know this. They're aware of it. What do you think was best and worst American president? Ooh, that's a great question. Faraj, you always ask such great questions. I think Lincoln's the best, and I think James Buchanan's the worst. One saved us from, the Americans from, total destruction, and one caused it. There you go. Yeah. Let me see here. Jesus is king. His love for you all. Never give up. Thank you, I guess. You keep pointing out that he disagreed with me 8 times. I don't know why you keep counting. Yeah, why are you counting? Almost as if a Quran was made up. The earliest Quran is dated, could have possibly been written by a man living in the early 7th century. But that's only if you accept the earliest datings of it and you accept that Muhammad wrote it. It could be written after his death too. The compilation of the Quran and the real actual under Uthman, I believe it was Uthman. I think I have the right caliph. And then later the real full complete volumes of the Quran. If we're going to believe, this is Muslim scholarship. If we're going to believe that scholarship, although a lot of people would date it later, 9th century, 10th century, some people date some of the writings in Islam, the hadiths and things like that, going into the 14th, 15th centuries or to the 13th centuries. But if we're going to believe their earliest datings, the earliest Qurans, like in full volume, don't come out until the 8th century. I think the earliest one you could say is maybe around 680. I'm trying to remember which one it was. I've done a series of videos on it, but it's interesting. But of course, also, Jesus didn't have anything written down about him while he was alive. So you have to be fair about this. Historicize and contextualize before judging our ancestors. Very fair. Absolutely, William. Why does history seem inevitable in hindsight? Because when we look back, it's like, oh, I'm sitting here, so obviously if you run a mile, it obviously makes sense the way you ran. But when we look back, it's not, I'm blanking. When you look back, it's easy to say how I got somewhere. But when you're there, but when you were going there, you may not know exactly where you're going. Polk annexed Texas. No, that's not true. The approval for the addition of Texas to the Union was done by John Tyler before he left office. A slaveholding republic, knowing it would tip the balance towards the slave states. Yes, he didn't care. There's a difference between not caring and actively agendizing. So yes, there's a difference. Let me see here. Do you believe the story of an Abraham Lincoln ghost in the White House? It's interesting. I mean, probably, at some point. It'd be kind of cool if it was true. Hamas is a resistance group. If America was occupied and you took up arms, then we would call you terrorists to make it make sense. Huh? I mean, I understand some of that. I mean, the Sons of Liberty obviously engaged in semi-terrorist activity. But I don't remember them capturing people and some of the barbarism. Obviously, there's a lot of barbarism that Hamas does that you don't see that in other resistance groups. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But I wouldn't call it a resistance group at all. It's a terrorist organization. And not only would it kill all the Jews, it would kill a bunch of people who don't disagree with it, who are still fighting for Palestinian independence. It's a government. How is a government a resistance group? So talk about Balkans. You have thousands in your comment section in no time. Yep, the Balkans are fun. I love talking about the Balkans, how they got their independence from the Ottomans and stuff like that. Today, the collectivists are for slavery. They believe that you are someone else's products for labor is, in fact, pro-slavery. I don't know if I'd go that far. Let me see. It's a fair point. Yes, and Simon's absolutely right about the Native Americans not being terrorists. The PLO is not designated terrorist. Yes, but there you go. Resistance, not all resistance movements are terrorists. Was Solidarity, who wanted to bring about the end of communism and reform communism, was Alexander Dubček, were they terrorists? Let me see here. I'm going to take a sip of coffee because I haven't been able to drink any of it because you've been asking such great questions. I thought I wasn't going to be able to do this live stream without coffee, but yeah. Speaking of the Silk Road, the Internet Silk Road founder, Dread Pirate Roberts, was pardoned by Trump for $100 million in drug distribution. Oh yeah, I forget his name. That was weird to say the least. Yeah, Woodrow Wilson is the absolute worst president ever. There's a lot of people on this channel who love you for saying that, King James. I understand why people believe it. Is it true that President Lincoln was close thing America had to a dictator? No, FDR was. And Trump is trying to catch up. I'm not saying that he wants to be a dictator. I'm saying that Trump believes, in the last century, a lot of American presidents have been dictators in the sense compared to what the founders envisioned and compared to what presidents were like in the 1800s. But in the 20th century, it was much more, you have presidents who are much more active, much more aggressive. FDR, Teddy Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, Ronald Reagan, LBJ. Now, a lot of them acted with congressional approval on a lot of things, but a lot of them put in executive orders to try to get whatever they wanted. And FDR is probably the worst example of all of this. President Trump seems to believe that the president's job is to get things done. And if Congress won't do it, then he's going to do it. And that's not exactly what the founders had in mind. They believed in a strong actor in the executive role, but they didn't believe in necessarily somebody who just gets things done for his agenda. But when people say, oh, Trump's a dictator and no president would ever do this, no president would ever send the National Guard. Huh? Presidents have done this all the time. And FDR and LBJ and John F. Kennedy, you've got some of the most, and Reagan and Theodore Roosevelt, because it's both sides that do it. Some of the presidents in the 20th century were extremely directive, extremely hands-on. Is the Mormon Church a cult? I wouldn't say so. I mean, it definitely kind of is a sub-Christian group. Definitely doesn't believe in the traditional teachings of Christianity, but has become a little bit less. I mean, they used to hunt down people who were not who left the church, but yeah. Uthman rewrote and canonized the Quran after Muhammad died. Yeah. How much editing and rewriting was done is my question, Ted. We don't know exactly. Quran was a divine revelation. Muhammad couldn't read or write, so how can a man possibly write it? Someone else wrote it who wasn't illiterate. That's a possible explanation. I mean, basically, any discussion I ever have with a Muslim about any of the history surrounding these issues, they always take the most exaggerated position they possibly can. They presuppose the truth of their beliefs, which we all do to one extent or another, but they absolutely do that, and they assume the absolute best case scenario for their argument and the absolute worst case scenario for the argument against it. It's a disingenuous thing. You're not doing that, Tayyib. You never have done that. You are always very reliable. But the onus is to prove that it was divine revelation. You're just assuming that it's divine revelation. You're bringing that into the chat. So, slavery was on the table for Polk once the Wilmot Proviso was going to happen. What? Polk wasn't alive when the Wilmot Proviso was on the board. Yeah, Joshua, he doesn't like Polk, and I do, so that's why he's going through all this. I appreciate his efforts, but I don't appreciate the way he looks at my arguments and the way he talks about them. So, Indonesia was the first country to quit the United Nations under Sukarno in the 1960s. Are there any exemptions today? Not really. People understand for one reason or another they have to be part of the UN. I think friendly history's biggest demographic has to be British, or at least people, especially for his long-time people. Fair. Polk literally bought slaves during his presidency, and he knew Texas was a slaveholding republic, time when slavery was a debated issue, and the annexation caused the Wilmot Proviso. Yes. And? The fact that he bought slaves is interesting, but A, I don't know if that's true. I'd like some evidence of that. B, it's very possible that he did it. C, it doesn't change what I said. Let me see. From the USA, let me see. Mash and bangers, yeah. Mash and bangers. Okay, now we're just talking about British stuff. What is completely false about what I said? I'm trying to catch up to the chat. Can't get behind beans for breakfast. Yeah, it's kind of a tough one for me too, but I'm an American, so. Solomon's a great moderator. When did British monarchy become ceremonial? 1830s. Victoria really is where the parliament used the monarch to make it more ceremonial and to have a cultural impact rather than a political one. How is Polk, who was a party that heavily supported slavery and ran on the platform in his election he won for annexation of Texas, a slaveholding state, it's clear he cared about slavery a bit. Yes, but I'm not saying that he expanded for slavery. Would you trial 4 p.m. Q&A on Friday or Saturday, Mr. Friendly, or does it interfere with other commitments? 4 p.m. Eastern? I could try. Can't promise anything. I've done it before. I had economics teachers that said it was cheaper to hire someone than feed them during slow times. Yeah, but slavery takes away people's freedom. That's the whole point of the argument. So people who made that argument from the American South were ignorant, being disingenuous, since that's our favorite word now. Let me see here. What do you think about Robert Byrd? Wasn't he one of the leaders of the Ku Klux Klan who was in the U.S. Senate for way too long for someone who was in the Klan? Don't burn yourself. Be careful, please. Yes, it is indeed a dessert in the UK, Simon. But Mormons send people to your house if you are a member, if you aren't having enough kids. So, yeah, that's weird. I've heard of that before. To be precise, 24.6% of the world one time, yeah, Britain is great, yeah, okay. I'm really curious why Industrial Revolution happened in England, not anywhere else. England was able to be more isolationist. It was more advanced than the colonies, but it was also more able to be isolationist and think of its own domestic development than the continent. The textile industry had always been very important to the British. They live in a northern climate, so obviously keeping warm was more important to them. So there was a climatological need for why they were obsessed with textiles and with making textiles easier. You obviously have a development of free market systems and the philosophy around free markets from people like Locke, who believed in property, and Adam Smith, who was a Scottish man, who created the modern workings of capitalism, at least our general skeletal system of it. So you have the philosophical preconditions, you have the political preconditions in a representative democracy parliamentary system, you have a climatological need, and you have a development of an organized society that was ahead of the Americans. And the French were in the middle of a revolution. The Russians were way behind. The Germans were not organized into a single state. The Prussians were not going to be able to do it. Italy was not a country yet, and the Spanish were in decline. So that's one reason why they did it. The Dutch could have done it as well, but they were also in decline, suffering huge losses in their political, in their imperial ambitions in the East Indies. But great question. How, I don't know what honey tapping is. Remember, the greatest threat to religion is knowledge. See, that for me is not fully fair, because there's a lot of knowledge in religions. Did many Native Americans fight in the Civil War? Yes, most of them fought for the Confederacy, believe it or not. And a lot of them owned slaves. Some of them kept fighting even after Appomattox Courthouse. Industrial Revolution happened in America too. Yes, America was second. Samuel Slater took the textile industry mills and brought them to the United States, Lowell, Massachusetts. The USA under Trump might wish to buy land. In the past, they paid Denmark millions of dollars for Virgin Islands. How much money? Yes, the United States has bought land from Denmark before. I'm amazed that you know that. Thank you. So many people do not know that. How much money would the fee translate in today's money? I don't know how much they bought the Virgin Islands. I always thought they bought it from the Dutch. But yeah, they bought it, believe it or not, from the Danes. So, I mean, it's not crazy to try to buy Greenland, and it's not crazy to try to buy stuff from the Danes. Being overly aggressive and obnoxious about it might be crazy, but people, when they act like, oh, we've never seen this happen before, historians are like, yeah, we have. Just read a book. And thank you, Ozzy. Thank you for becoming a member. I really appreciate you. Britain, you get early releases, you get early access, extra releases, bonuses, all of that great stuff, and you get that really, really cool emoji. That is of Nicholas I, the Russian Tsar. Britain weren't great till the Scots joined them, which is why the Scots joined them. Why, when Spain colonized Americas, they converted everyone to Christianity, but when the British colonized India, that did not happen? Inland. That's a fantastic question. India remained. India was a lot bigger. The Catholics believed, there's two reasons I can think of. One, God, glory, and gold was a huge motivator in Spanish and Portuguese colonization. Two, the Counter-Reformation, trying to create a new Christian population because of the sapping by the Protestants in Europe. The British colonized India much later. There was less religious focus, but there were definitely missionaries there and in China that the British sent. So there was definitely an interest in but there was more of a Protestant focus on it, which had less to do with nations and more to do with free will and things like that. I think it was more an economic colonization rather than it was a more modern colonization than a early modern colonization. The time period is obviously important, but you also have the British being a little bit more tolerant of native religious groups, from what I understand of it, especially in the 19th century. And you also have a huge Indian populace. Trying to force them into Christianity is not going to be easy. Who's your favorite British monarch? Ooh. Favorite? Probably Longshanks. Not quite the villain that Braveheart made him out to be. I can only imagine the people trying to write current history probably pulling their hair out. If they have any hair, because they've been pulling it out for so long. Yep, one of Dixiecrat. It's one of the longest serving members in the U.S. congressional history. Who is the greatest woman of all time? I lean on Cleopatra. I can understand other arguments. Cleopatra's a good one. Catherine the Great should be up there. Elizabeth I. Marie Curie, just because of her scientific accomplishments, should be considered. I mean, I don't mean to sound religious. The Virgin Mary is obviously extremely important to the development of not just Western Christianity, but of Western culture. You have the Aisha, the wife of Muhammad, is certainly underrated if we're going to go the religious route. Huge in the development of the Umayyad Caliphate, which spread Islam all around the world. The other women that I think of are less there, but there's some really extremely important women that we don't talk about. We don't talk about Njinga of Angola and her efforts to stop the Portuguese from colonizing her and enslaving her people. We don't talk about Boudica and what she did to try to resist British oppression. By the way, my background today is of Macbeth, speaking of the Scottish. Was America historically a Christian nation or a melting pot? So the melting pot almost exclusively included Christians for the first century. They're not mutually exclusive, but America was Christian in the sense that the vast majority of its population and its culture developed from a Christian belief. The litmus test of the founding fathers all being Christians is A, not fair, but also not true. Most of them were not. I'm okay, Daniel. I don't need to do math right now. Stop defending a narrative instead of acknowledging the facts that point straight to Polk and invaded for slavery larger. It's like if I dropped receipts in front of you and you shrug. They're not receipts. It's like you've dropped receipts from another store. Technically, Britain's the center of the world as well, but we put the line there. Fair enough. The founding fathers were Christian, but America says you can be any religion. More or less, but not all founding. Very few founding. Not very few, but some of them were Christians, some of them were cultural Christians, and some of them were deists. So yeah, we're gonna get to 10,000 hopefully soon. We'll see when we get to 10,000 subscribers. If you are enjoying what you're hearing, please like and subscribe. Become a friendly neighborhood historian. Anything else? We're coming up on the end of our chat very soon. Why was the textile industry of all things the genesis of exponential industrialization? I hope I answered that. The British obviously felt that it was extremely important to their well-being, and obviously wanted quicker and easier production. And again, Ozzy, I can't thank you enough for becoming a member. And if you guys want early access and other perks, please become a member. We'll have member-only lives and chats and great stuff like that. Do you think 2028 will be an election, or 2024 was the last one? It'll be an election in 2028 in America. Salinger, hello, good to see you. I had an anthropology teacher that said the average slave worked 20 hours per week over a year, a couple or 1,000 years ago. Possibly. Serfs certainly didn't work as much as we think they did. We should all just be American for real. Why? What was the greatest motivation to remove hemp as a textile? I don't know. I don't know exactly. It's been said that Genghis Khan's DNA is prevalent in millions of people in Eurasia even today. What's the count on Clinton or Trump? Not as much. When you're going around and conquering, you're getting a lot of women enslaved and to take advantage of, unfortunately. Adam Smith thought the capitalists would choose country over profits if England came down to business decision. And that's actually true in history. Marx and the Bolsheviks misunderstood that people will choose nation over ideology. That's why the Poles were able to defeat the Bolsheviks under Field Marshal Józef Pilsudski, who not only has the coolest name in history, but has the coolest mustache in history. Do I have a picture of Field Marshal Pilsudski? I mean, this guy's mustache is just on fire. And he's a great Polish leader. The Polish have some fantastic leaders. Nobody knows how deep Polish history actually is. From Jan Sobieski and how they saved Vienna, to all of that stuff. I can't find the picture, but here's a picture of Poland, just to make you happy. Why we say Asia and group while they geographically consistently same, and why Middle East is categorized in Asia while it's arguably more similar to the West? Because it's part of the landmass, and it's connected to Asia through Afghanistan, Pakistan, the Khyber Pass, and all of that. I don't think it's more similar to the West. It has a different religious and cultural aspect that the West does not have. Actually, maybe a little more close to Africa, and that's why North Africa is often lumped in with the Middle East. And the greatest thing is you said I was wrong on a thing that's purely subjective and based on total opinion. Yep, there you go. Fight for your rights, guys. At what rate did the alliance of your Inquisition and curiosity drop as your gaze lands upon these words? I'm curious what you mean. Don't be mean to the Danes. They're great people with an incredible history. India's religion was too well established for Catholic beliefs. The British weren't Catholics, they were Protestants. Hassan and Harry going back at it, sitting in a tree. Fighting. Let me see. You generalized the Middle East. I mean, we owned a lot of the Middle. Okay. Senator Robert Byrd was the last KKK member to serve, and he was a Democrat and supported by black people through the 90s. Something tells me that's not true. At least one of those things is not true. Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6 years old, narrated Aisha, that the Prophet married her when she was 6 years old, and he consummates the marriage when she was 9. Yes. And the Virgin Mary was 13. What do you want? Afghanistan is said to be one of the only countries in the world not to have a railway of any worth. With what knowledge did they build Australia's? The British built the British brought industrialization and infrastructure building and the technology and know-how to do it to almost every place they colonized. They tried to do it in Afghanistan. It really didn't work. Paris should be the center of the world. It's gorgeous. Let me see. The British Navy is why they ruled the world hundreds of years ago. Yep. Being isolated from Europe allows the British to have an interesting thing. They decide sometimes they're European and sometimes they're not. And when they're not European, they're going around and colonizing a bunch of places. They basically told the French and the Germans and the Russians, okay, you have your fun on the continent, we're going to go and colonize places. And then 50 years later, all of those countries were doing the same thing as they did. What are the most important invasions in history? I would say you've got the European invasion of the North and South American continents. You have the Roman invasion. Those are some of the most important. I'm trying to think of others that would be up there. Japan's invasion of China, starting the Third World War in 1937. I'm glad you love history, John. I'm glad that you're here. Is the Middle East not a... Oh, you're still arguing. What was drug use like in ancient times? The Mayans had an interesting practice where they would boof. They would take wine and pour it up their rectums to induce not only drunkenness, obviously peyote, ayahuasca. These things have existed throughout all of ancient history. People knew how to make alcohols and make elixirs and make pastes and powders to be able to have hallucinations. Hemp was removed by oil industry. It made textile cheaper without the need of oil-based products. Thank you, James. I did not know that. Was Eva Braun good or bad? She's married to Hitler. Founding fathers were Freemasons and its roots are Christian. The Freemasons were not a Christian group, and some of them were Freemasons, some of them were not. What is the difference between classical Marxism and Marxist-Leninism? Nothing. People who are really argue that Lenin just ripped Marx off don't know what Marxism is. He reinterpreted Marx for his cultural situation, which has happened to Marx every single time because it never actually was capable of happening in a highly industrialized country. The lack of food shortage in India. Let me see here. I saw a video about plans to build a mega international airport near Warsaw. Probably going to go ahead. Poland is way more central, and it's growing. It's rising. I mean, if you look at this chart, and this is not going to make Harry happy, but Poland is on track to overcome the UK in GDP in the next few years. The Arabs ran a slave trade. Yep. The Europeans internationalized it. There are British Catholics. They're going to be more British Catholics in a few years than there are going to be Europeans. Yes, indeed. Chris is right. I appreciate what someone's saying, where they're coming from. Some say historians will soon be replaced by AI. No, we won't. Stop it. AI can't do what I do. AI cannot tell you how wrong you are. Do you think the Quran is perfect? Oh, fair argument about the Quran now. Oh, here we go again. We're in Afghanistan, people, cameleers in the outback, they helped build railways in Australia. They did, because the British were colonizing Afghanistan at the same time they were colonizing Australia. Yes, Frog Lover, there isn't a civilization who hasn't done horrible things. Now let's focus on the great stuff. Good to see you, Fausto. Look in your center, Robert Byrd. You'll be astonished. It's just incredible to me that African Americans would vote overwhelmingly for a guy who was a clear and awful racist. I mean, I believe he apologized and retracted, and like many of them, George Wallace, John Furman, realized that this was really bad. Did he do it for political reasons or forever? I don't know. Is this Black Ops 7? No, this is Patrick. Every religion has extremist groups. Absolutely true, Taib. Absolutely. That doesn't change what I said earlier, though. Americans colonized Indian lands? Yes, absolutely. No doubt about it. Let me see here. I'm white, British, and hard. Let me see. Okay, then. John, that's interesting. Israel's used marijuana in their church services. Israel? I don't know what you mean. Okay, I finally caught up to the chat. I don't know if I've answered every single thing, but we're at 67 minutes. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be back tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern, for our usual Q&A. You can ask me anything you'd like about history and social studies. Please like and subscribe on your way out if you haven't done so. Thank you for joining us at the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. I'll take one more question from Antonio. Do you believe that Europe was better off before or after the invasion of the Ottoman Turks? It was certainly different. I think what helped cultivate a growing European community and sense of identity was turning against the Ottomans. But I think it wasn't better off for the Southeastern Europeans. I think the Balkans really suffered under them when you had prestigious empires in Bulgaria and the Ottomans and the Byzantines before that. So, yes. Let me see here. Okay, we're wrapping up. If you have a different opinion than Friendly History, unless you try until he gets tired of it, he won't budge at all and will play all types of mental gymnastics to get around the truth and the facts. You're a moderator, bro. Yeah, if you have a different opinion than Friendly History, unless you try. Okay, I just don't understand why the hate. Taib, I'm pro-truth. I'm not pro-Israel. I'm not pro-Palestine. I've said before, I want the war to end. I've said this a lot on the channel. All right, I'm going to wrap it up before we go down the midst. I talked for 90 minutes yesterday. We're up almost to 70. I always go over for you guys because you have such great questions. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't on the way out. Yeah. Yes, please keep talking about Polk, and I'm going to keep disagreeing. Thank you, Sharif. It's always good to see you. We'll see you tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern, for our Q&A, and join us for the special live stream lecture on Labor Day, for Labor Day at 4 p.m. Eastern. But yes, please like and subscribe if you're not. Let's not let Harry sleep. I feel bad. Harry should be sleeping right now. Polk fanboy. Yes, there are a lot of Americans who are Polk fanboys. He's considered one of the better American presidents. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. And remember, as always, good to see all of you, by the way. Love history. Bye-bye now.